I was recently helping a gentleman who came to me and said that he had a family and he was worried that if he moved overseas and took advantage of much more favorable tax laws, that he would suffer what is discussed in the media as reverse culture shock, that eventually he would return to Canada and he wouldn't recognize it. He wouldn't feel like he fit in anymore because he spent so much time abroad. And he wanted to know what my answer to that was. I'm going to tell you in this video. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson, and this is a question that gets asked occasionally, and it's something that on an intuitive level I feel when I'm talking to folks is they want to make sure that they're still going to have that connection with home, because I believe that for a lot of people there is that sense that where they come from is home. They don't like the tax policies, they may not like the way the government's going, they may not feel like they're being treated well. They want to go where they're treated best, but they still want that option to come home. I'll be honest, I never entirely had that. I grew up and never really felt as if I were American. I remember as an adult going overseas for some of my first trips and just feeling like the social connections were so much stronger with people in other places. But I understand, because I deal with a lot of people and I have a lot of friends and I help a lot of folks who feel a bit more sentimental about where they're from than I do. And so my answer to that is, you can't always go home. I think that there is this sense to look at things as having a sense of permanence, where if you move offshore, somehow you're going to be banned from returning. Now, certainly, if you are from the United States and you go to the more extreme, or the most extreme solution of renouncing your citizenship, then maybe you can't go back. Certainly, you should evaluate what will be involved in that. I generally think that those fears are overblown, but that's certainly a possibility. No one has to let their non-citizens into the country. But if you're an American and you're just going to go live overseas somewhere and take advantage of some tax savings and lifestyle improvements, or if you're from any other country in the world, you don't have to give up your citizenship, and you can always go back. There is no sense of permanence. You can make a decision day by day. Now, from a tax perspective, if you are a U.S. citizen, you have a bit of an advantage. You can just go year to year. In most cases. It's always worth reviewing that, but if you're just going to be physically present outside of the United States, you can just go year to year, and you can pop in, you can pop out, you can come, you can go. If you're from everywhere else, Australia, Canada, UK, where have you, and you're going to leave and become what's called tax non-resident, then you're going to want to spend a certain amount of time outside of the country. If you just leave for a year and then turn around and come right back, they're not really necessarily going to believe that you left permanently, and therefore you may be back on the tax roll retroactively. So you want to do some planning surrounding that. Generally, what I tell people is, go into that with the assumption that it will be permanent. That's what I did when I first went and took a long one-year trip. I did it saying, I'm giving myself the ability to wriggle out of this at the end of a year if I want to, but my goal is it's going to be permanent, and I'm just going to keep going with it. But at least I give myself that, in my ego, the ability to get out if I need to. That's the approach that I would take with it, is can I commit to 1 year, 2 years, 3 years overseas, but the goal is really that it could be permanent. Because the biggest fear, potentially, is that you'll like it better somewhere else, and that you won't want to come back. And that's where the whole reverse culture shock thing comes in, where you'll read stories in the media about someone who moved from the UK to Hong Kong. I read that story not so long ago, and after 7 years she goes back to the UK and she doesn't even recognize it. I imagine if I went back to the US now after years of not really being there, I imagine it would seem much different. I feel that it's probably a much angrier place, a much more paranoid place than when I left. But I can give you a few ideas. What I would tell you is make sure you're staying in contact with your friends that you're leaving behind. Take the initiative. Most people, when you leave, are going to think that somehow you're cutting them out of your life. As a sensitive person, I felt like people weren't interested in talking to me anymore. But for the most part, people wanted to talk to me. They just didn't really understand what was going on when I left. So if you make the initiative, if you reach out, I think that you'll be able to keep maintaining friendships. On the other hand, make friendships with people where you're moving or the places where you're going. This is one thing in the different places that I call home. I like to meet people to where I have a network of support. And I found that, for the most part, that's not Americans. It's not Anglo people. I have some friends from the US and other countries, but a lot of my friends are from other places, from Georgia, from Egypt, from Malaysia, from Singapore, from all over, Montenegro. And so I think making connections locally, as well as keeping the ones that you already have, keeping your friendships active, being the one to make that happen, is going to help you stay connected to your culture. I don't necessarily recommend reading all the news from your home country, because I think at a certain point it's just worth making a clean break. There's no benefit to reading what's happening, the latest thing Trump's talking about, the latest law they're passing in Australia. I don't know that beyond basic maintenance that's necessary. But all of that to be said, what if you decided to go overseas for a couple years knowing you could always come back? And what if you found out you actually liked it better? What if you found out you got more value? What if you found out all the things that they told you all along about how this was the best country on earth, you'll never find any better in one of those countries where they're living in huts? What if you found that that place where they're allegedly living in huts was actually where you wanted to be? I think that knowing that it doesn't have to be permanent, knowing there's an escape hatch, while hoping that it could be permanent, because you're hoping that you're going to win. You're hoping you're going to find something that's great. You're hoping you're going to create a better life for yourself, not just financially, but a better lifestyle, more of the freedom that you want. I think that that would be the goal that I would have in mind, but also knowing that if you don't find it, you're free to either tweak, you're free to pick up and move somewhere else, you're free to keep going on to the next place, or you're free to come back, and there's no shame in any of that. And know that if you do it for 5 years and you come back, and during those 5 years you were a 6 or 7 figure entrepreneur, or maybe you sold your company, potentially you're coming back with 6 or 7 figures worth of extra money that you wouldn't have had if you did it. And when you imagine the extra good that you could do with that money for yourself and for your family and for your legacy, that might be a reason just enough to take the plunge. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist. I wrote this book, which you can find on Amazon, to distill a lot of the stuff we talk about in these videos and a lot of the stuff I've learned over the last decade plus traveling all around the world, teaching you about how to legally reduce your taxes, build your personal freedom, and create wealth faster. Definitely get a copy of this book if you want to learn more. Now, if you want to watch more videos, make sure you subscribe to our channel and make sure you click the notifications bell so you never miss one of our new videos with more tips on how to go where you're treated best. And if you're already a 6 or 7 figure entrepreneur and you'd like to put these strategies in place for yourself, go to nomadcapitalist.com and learn about how I can help you.